Henry Ford is considered one of the greatest entrepreneurs of the 20th century. By popularizing the system of mass production and the assembly line, he significantly reduced production costs and made automobiles affordable to millions of people. To explain Ford's impact on the automobile industry, let's first talk about how the automobile industry worked before his innovations transformed it. Before Ford, a car was considered a luxury item and only very wealthy people could afford to buy it. First of all, because even at that time it was a complex mechanical structure. And for its production, highly qualified universal specialists were needed who understood all aspects of the car's operation. They knew how to design, knew how to assemble various parts and assemblies. They could drill, screw, grind, and so on. And in turn, this required a lot of manual labor, and together with the need to hire highly qualified specialists, this significantly increased the cost of the car itself. And another nuance of car production at that time was the impossibility of scaling it. Because every good generalist could open his own production at any time. If I know how to make a car, then why should I work for someone if I can do it myself? That is why the entire automotive industry consisted of small workshops that were opened by such specialists or groups of specialists and were engaged in the production of cars on individual orders. And when Ford created the first production in 1903, he started working just like other companies. Special places were set up in the workshops for assembling cars, where a group of people assembled one car. First, these parts had to be brought from the warehouse. Then they put the chassis together, then they installed the wheels, springs, transmission, engine together. They adjusted one part to another, fixed it. And this whole process of fully assembling a car then took 750 minutes. Over time, Ford realized that such production was inefficient. In general, in all of Ford's books, you can see that the issue of labor efficiency was a fixed idea for him. For example, in his book Today and Tomorrow, he writes the following. Previously, we had large warehouses, and workers crowded around the windows to get the tools they needed. But this was an unproductive waste of time. It often turned out that the transfer of a tool for 30 cents cost labor time, which was 25 cents. Therefore, we eliminated the central warehouse of tools. After all, a worker cannot be paid a high wage if he stands and waits. And to reduce this unproductive waste of time, he decided to deliver work to the workers by installing an assembly line. There is an unconfirmed version that the very idea of assembly line production arose in Ford after visiting a slaughterhouse. He saw how pig carcasses hung on chains moved along the line, and butchers at that moment cut off pieces of meat. And it was this efficiency of the mechanized process that prompted Ford to create his own conveyor. At the same time, when Ford decided to install a conveyor, even here he focused on seemingly insignificant details. When a worker bends down to pick up a tool or part, he also wastes time. And to minimize movements and reduce unproductive time, Ford formulated two basic principles. A worker should not take more than one step. A worker should not lean forward or to the sides while working. And for this, he ordered to raise the conveyor to waist height, where everyone had their own place, and the necessary tools and parts were at hand. In addition, the conveyor assembly process itself was divided into small operations. One person should screw the wheels, another should install the springs, a third, the transmission, a fourth, the engine. And over time, the number of operations increased, and the work itself became more and more simplified. Over time, the worker who drove the bolt did not install the nut. The one who installed the nut did not tighten it. The workers did not lift or drag anything. The machines did it for them. As I said earlier, labor efficiency by saving time was one of the main principles of labor organization at Ford Enterprises. Every movement of the worker was carefully calculated. Every second the worker had to spend only on the work process itself. The automobile magnate understood well that a gain in seconds is a gain in final profit. Fewer unnecessary movements, more final products. And thanks to this breakdown of the car assembly process into a large number of simple operations, and the movement of material along the conveyor line past workers standing in a comfortable position, it was possible to achieve a four-fold increase in labor productivity. The time required to assemble a car was reduced from 12 hours to less than 2. On the other hand, such monotonous and extremely stressful work was very exhausting for workers. Therefore, it is not surprising that the turnover of personnel at the enterprises was extremely high, and employee loyalty and discipline were extremely low. And then the automobile magnate took a strong step. In January 1914, he announced an unprecedented increase in wages for his employees throughout the country. From now on, the lowest skilled worker would receive at least $5 a day. And since then, workers began to value their work, despite the working conditions themselves. Moreover, each of these workers understood he could be replaced at any moment. After all, by breaking down car production into simpler operations, qualification requirements were simplified. Now production did not require highly qualified workers, and anyone could work at such a production facility after completing a short training course at the plant itself. Of course, no one is saying that Ford abandoned engineers altogether. It's just that now they were unnecessary in the production itself, and they worked only on designing cars and equipment for production. And although the assembly line is often considered the basis for mass production, another important element of such production is complete standardization, which made it possible to make a large number of completely identical cars, Model T, and achieve huge economies of scale in production. Again, Ford did not come up with this method. Standardization was first used at the Colt factories in the 1870s. It was he who introduced the production of interchangeable parts, which were checked by special calibration systems. Ford simply went further and was able to combine standardization with assembly line production. And in order for the correct standardized parts to enter the assembly line, he introduced a calibration system, and a separate technical control service was created to check quality. And it was thanks to these key innovations that Ford managed not only to reduce production time, but also to significantly reduce costs. And this made it possible to make the car more accessible to more people, which automatically increased the potential sales market.